Thank you. So I've gone over this several dry runs, and I can tell you with certainty one of two things is going to happen. I am either going to run way too long, or I am going to go way too fast. So in the event that I run way too long, I'm going to hit the point right now so that you guys can be mulling over it the whole way through. My biggest point today is going to be that our cities and the way we plan, fund, and manage them have a tremendous impact on our happiness and well-being. By the time you get to an office and start working, there are so many elements of your city that has made the potential for that experience to be good. There's so much potential for that city to have already contributed to making that experience very good or making that experience lackluster. So while our cities can have a lot of impact on our happiness and well-being, today I'm going to really focus on how specifically our cities can help our happiness and well-being in our workplaces. So one of the reasons why we're talking about this at all at my company is because people want to live in cities, and people are wanting to live in cities because they provide opportunities. For the first time in our world's history, in 2008, we passed a milestone wherein more people were living in cities than were living in urban areas. The UN projects that by 2050, nearly 2/3 of the world will be living in cities. That's going to be an increase of 2.4 billion people in the next generation, with approximately half from rural migration. African cities are expected to double in size, and Asian cities will gain 1 billion more people. For rural migrants and existing urban residents, cities can provide a better future with rising incomes and better access to healthcare and education. They can also provide opportunities that provide upward mobility, maybe not in one generation, but often over 2 generations, no matter how humble the beginnings began in that city. They offer easier access to markets for entrepreneurs. They offer formal and informal training and employment networks. So to accommodate this increasing population, governments are really right now racing to keep up. They're trying to retrofit their existing cities. As well, they're trying to add on to new cities. And often you'll see that some of these cities are growing by themselves on the outskirts in giant informal settlements. In just the next 15 years, governments will need to spend $57 trillion on infrastructure to keep up with the growing population. Now, this is daunting, but it also presents governments, private enterprise, and civil society organizations with a unique opportunity to start with a different template for how they build their cities and to build them happier this time. Considering the core attraction of cities to offer employment opportunities and the sacrifices that people make to access those opportunities, creating environments which facilitate happiness and well-being in the workplace should be a key objective when designing those cities. As I said earlier, by the time an employee starts on the first day of the job, the environment in which they live has a large responsibility in the happiness and well-being they will experience as a result of that job. And there are opportunities to enhance that experience for them at the city level, at the building level, and at the company level from an urban planner perspective. At United World Infrastructure, we see the development of happier cities as an opportunity to create shared value, which both supports the social and economic and environmental well-being of communities, but also has the potential to appeal to a wider market and create higher returns for our investors. Happier cities have higher occupancy rates. There's more investment in those cities. So for us, there's no loss there. Putting more effort and more investment into making the city happier will only make that city more attractive to visitors, workers, and residents, and future residents. So to tell you a little bit about us, besides the fact that we really want to build happier cities, we are a global company which builds cities in frontier markets specifically. This requires the integration of 4 different layers, which I think you can see. The built environments, city management services, policy frameworks, and investments. We work together with all of these different elements at the inception of a city idea and all the way through to the point where we're managing services within the cities and trying to help them gain an aspect of life in order to make them happier. Our signature project right now is a development for a population of 450,000 in Johor, Malaysia. In its first 4 years of construction, it generated over 20,000 jobs for local citizens and attracted $1.2 billion in investment for land development. Now we're starting to work on looking at aspects of that city to make it happier. So one of the things we did to start exploring a happier city is we decided we were going to look at all the work that everybody else had done. And I don't know if I can, do I have a, oh yeah. So we thought it would be better to start at the right side here and look at what are the measurements and metrics for happiness and well-being. And from there we can work backwards and start thinking about, okay, thinking about what we do, policies, infrastructure, and services, what are the inputs that we might put in that would eventually lead to improved personal and community well-being, which would then lead to improved happiness, which we knew would form somewhat of a virtuous cycle. Happier people can be healthier, healthier people are happier. So lots of good things in between those two elements. So a number of influential studies and reports influenced our early learnings. You can see a smattering of them here, but of course, this is the one that you'll find was the most influential to us. But all of these came in very handy for providing us with a set of metrics that we felt like was reliable and that we felt would be presentable with investors as well, to try and put forward the idea that not only do we want to build these cities, but we want to build them happier and we want to measure them over time. Two types of measurements started to emerge for us. I've been using the word happy broadly, but we started to see two different separate groups of measures that we wanted to include. One were happiness measures, which were subjective, meaning these were things that we were going to ask people how they were feeling. And then the other were objective measures that we refer to as well-being. So with the subjective measures, the four key ones that we decided to hone in on were life satisfaction, using the Cantrell ladder, considering your life on a ladder from 0 to 10, 10 being the best possible life and 0 being the worst possible life. How would you rate your life today? Fulfillment, I'm going to say this word wrong, but it's eudaimonia, flourishing, that idea of reaching one's potential, which has a lot of relevance to what we're going to talk about today with happiness in the workplace. We also saw emotional affect. How were you feeling yesterday? What feelings of joy did you feel joy? Did you laugh? Did you feel restfulness? And then finally, domains. We thought that if we were going to go to the point where we were trying to figure out infrastructure inputs that would make somebody happier, trying to kind of nail down different aspects of their life they were satisfied with, whether it was their health, their income, their friendships, that would actually be important to us when it came time to design the right built environments for them. So on the well-being side, we have a number of things that major measures that emerged from the World Happiness Report, which tended to show or demonstrate, correlate with the largest differences between countries in happiness. So I have some of them here, but I think I added some other ones in. But healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life's choices, perception of corruption, GDP per capita, number of social connections, and I always forget one, there's 6, but it'll pop into my head in a minute. But we thought about those a lot as we developed what would become our own wheel. Now the funny thing about this wheel is if you look at it very closely, it's so similar to the Gross National Happiness Index that I couldn't even figure out what was different about it last night. But I think we kind of went full circle where we started with G&H and then came back to this idea that we wanted 9 domains. There are a few differences with G&H, but what I want to focus on is in the, wrong one. In the core, that's where we're putting our central happiness measures, those things that I talked about, life satisfaction, emotional affect, fulfillment and flourishing, feeling as if you're realizing your potential and sense of purposefulness, and then around it, we've got happiness in the different domains. So looking at happiness in how you feel about your health, how satisfied you are about your health. And then as we move, whoops, I think I can go to the next slide. Yeah. So in the center, we've got those 4 central measures of happiness. And for us, that's sort of like, that's the outcome. It's so far away from what the inputs are that we want to get a little bit closer to what those inputs look like. So if we move farther out, as I said, we've got these 9 different domains. And in each one, I've got some sample questions thrown up there. But basically, this is just asking in each of those domains, it's basically like saying, look, I'm about to ask you questions because I'm assuming things that make you happier, but why don't you tell me how you feel about your life? How satisfied are you with your job? How satisfied are you with your income or your ability to pay for the things you want? We move a little bit farther out, and now we start getting into the well-being, where I said in each of those domains, we look at things to see sort of specifics that we know often align with happiness. How many sick days have you taken this year? And we look at it at the household and individual level. How much time have you spent in reflection? How much time have you had to spend outside recently? Do you feel like the air is clean where you live? And then going out, we also want to try, where they're available, to look at the collective measures of whatever national statistics have been collected, so that we can look at what are the healthy life expectancies in the specific region we're looking at. So that ends up being our model, and we come back to this again, where we've got our inputs and outputs. It's kind of, the outputs has to do with, did people use it? So if I put a primary health care facility somewhere and nobody uses it, and health care doesn't improve, and people don't get happier from it, then the problem is really sooner in this output stage. So we put that together because that kind of has to do with us putting things in and measuring whether they're going to be used. The effects of improving personal well-being and the impact. So I've got a few things listed here that I'll mention, and then I'm going to move to the next slide because it sort of repeats them. I told you that we would look at things at the city level, at the building level, and at the company level, which could improve workplace happiness. So I want to go back to that one central concept of happiness right here that I was talking about flourishing. So when we talk about flourishing and being in a job that helps you, or realizing your potential, I think we can all see how your job, whether it's income earning or non-income earning, is very closely related to that sense of fulfillment. So the places where we can really do something about that are at the city level. And at the city level, it is your physical environment that helps, but a huge part of that is also the policies that we, as investors and infrastructure developers, work together with our governments to help establish. So it's so small here that I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. So I've got this going outward. If we start here with policy frameworks, might be a little bit small. One of the really important things we do is, if we're going into a frontier market that's been having trouble getting the right investment to build the things that they need, we will work with them to establish a special economic zone, which gives it a little bit of flexibility in its trade and business laws. Now, what that has a potential to do, and what we use it for often, is to create something called a one-stop shop. So in one development we were working in, I remember hearing in one country, it took 36 different departments before you could get a permit to start a business. So in a situation like that, that's going to be hard to get people to get up and get started in starting their own businesses. So that special economic zone allows us to create a one-stop shop where we facilitate that, we put it all together in one place, and a person really just talks to the first person, and all the processes follow after that. That helps both the local citizens figure out how to get their job started. It also helps give outside investors, if a country's interested in bringing in foreign investment, it helps them see a little bit of transparency, and it takes away some of the risk. The other thing we like to do in that special economic zone is structure fiscal and non-fiscal incentive packages. Because what we can do with that's critical to jobs and workplaces is we can help governments attract industries that aren't there yet. So when I said at the beginning that the city has a lot to do with whether you're going to be in a job that's going to bring you happiness and fulfillment, it doesn't matter how fancy your office is. It could look like Google. And you're not going to be happy if the work you're doing is not what you feel you were meant to do, or is not challenging you, or is not reaching that potential you want. So the best thing we can do at the city level is try and bring in lots of different people and try and bring in lots of different opportunities for you to start your own business, for you to upskill, for you to learn from others, and to facilitate bringing in that variety of opportunities you can look at and that opportunity to move upwards if you want. Now, at the built environment level at a city, we can also do something that's not exactly fulfillment, but becomes important when we get down to the physical environment of your office. And that is, we can provide incentives for companies that agree to, for building developers who agree to get LEED certification, which is about environmentally friendly standards, or, let's see if I'm there yet. Oh, not there. I'll skip. Or well building standards. And well building standards, I'll come back to it for a little bit longer if I've got time, but well building standards are a new set of standards that try and ensure the emotional and physical well-being of the tenants in the buildings. They try and increase physical activity. They try and make sure the air quality in the buildings is good. It's an incredibly technical document. It's an incredibly rigorous set of certifications, but it's meant to sort of complement that LEED certification to be, okay, if we're going to build buildings that protect our environment, let's build buildings that protect the health of the people that might be sitting in them all day. So at the city level, we can actually put incentives in place so that building developers are incentivized to make their buildings in that way. The other thing we can do at this city level is we can create cities that are mixed developments, which provide, rather than you have your office over here or your workplace over here and your home over here and you go shopping over here, you mix it up. And so where you go to work, you might have a place to pick up groceries, you might have childcare, you have access to mass transit, you might live very close there, so that encourages you walking, that helps you, that alleviates the time that you spent in commuting. This is especially onerous for mothers and single mothers because they very often have 2 or 3 jobs. They've got their job, they've got to help support their husband's job, and they've got to take care of the kids and get all the things ready for taking care of the home. So being able to put all those things in the same place has a real impact on inclusiveness and bringing satisfaction to those people that are working, but in a way not necessarily fulfilling the job, but helping them have time to spend with family, other aspects of happiness. This is just one of the cities where one of our developments.
2 minutes, Aubrilyn.
Okay, I can do it. So this just demonstrates this idea of mixed-use development. Here you see here's a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk, a 13-minute walk, and a 20-minute walk. And one of the things we've really worked on recently is green areas. That you should have a green area within 5 minutes. You should have a green area with some type of park or bench, something that's amenable to children within 10 minutes. Within 15 minutes, you should have one that's a gathering place. And somewhere within 45 minutes, you should have some place that can actually hold events. So trying to bring all those places together into a city makes it so that when you're in the workplace, you have access to all of these things, as well when you're at home, you have access to all these things and you're not wasting as much time commuting. So I'm gonna quickly get down to at the building level. Okay, yeah, so at the building level, I'll go into maybe a little bit of detail on one of these, like the fitness concept. So imagine that your city wasn't planned this way. Your building developer still, in his best or her best interest, could decide, I want to build with these standards anyway, because I know that if you have a good building, I can sell this idea and rent it out to potential occupants and say, look, your employees will have less sick days if they're here. You'll pay less for health insurance if you're here. So one example of that might be fitness. This is an example I often give. So you can actually encourage people in a building to do more exercise by putting the staircase in a place they can see it. If you put your staircase off as just the fire exit, that's the only time it's going to get used. But if you put it out, and the actual standards require that it's visible from the doorway. So doing that increases the chances that people are going to go on walkways. Decorating different hallways and staircases so that they're pleasant to look at encourages people to walk more. Building developers can also, within their own power and their own plot of land, decide to have a green area. At the city level, you might be able to require that of building developers, but they might want to do that anyway because they want the occupants to have a place to go out and socialize. The location of that building, if the city isn't terribly well designed, locating that building in a place where you have all of those, a tailor, a beauty salon, a grocer, a child care center, is helpful. If you can place those things in the building, that's also useful. So I'm going to very quickly get down to the company level, but I always think...
Time.
Okay. Let's look at things here. Active desks, staircases you can see, cafeteria people can eat together, and this one, this is in Dubai. It's a hit and miss if you've ever been there, the district, the financial center, but lots of green areas, lots of activities. I'm on the other side, and it's just dead where I am, and when I go over there, it's a party. Everybody's having a good time. So, thank you.